Alright, it says upcoming. So are we streaming? Never done this before. Am I streaming? Oh, it appears I am. Alright, well, I guess I'm live. Alright. Happy birthday. Or unbirthday, as is more likely. Now, I did ask everyone to submit questions if they had anything worth asking at all. And one person responded. Let's see if I can find that. And weirdly, they did not respond on YouTube. They responded on Reddit, which is a no-no. You do not respond. You do not message me on Reddit. I mean, it's there. You can do it, I guess. It's not technically illegal. But I would rather you email me if you want to private message me. That it doesn't make any sense because I don't have Twitter. I don't have any of that icky stuff. So email, email. Remember that? That's what I like. Yeah, but it's this person who's named just to say I'm sorry. And they say, Forever Dirt, I just saw your new video where you were asking people to send you questions for your upcoming 1K celebration live stream. Here's my question. I saw that you have the flags of several European countries or territories hanging on your wall. Have you ever actually been to Europe? If so, which places did you visit? What did you like or not like about the places you visited? I just generally interested in your impression of Europe as an American visitor. Well, I'm not an American visitor. For your information, I have never visited Europe before. Oh, Mr. Garbage Username says hello. That is a pretty garbage username. You should try harder. I've never visited Europe before. The reason I have a Welsh flag and an Icelandic flag here. The Icelandic flag logically should be on top. Because the reason it's there is because I was studying Icelandic for years, many years. Devoted a lot of time to Icelandic, the Icelandic language. And so logically that should be on top. But I also spent some time working on the Welsh language. Not nearly as much. But the reason the Welsh flag is on top is because it's so cool. The dragon, a Dragoch is what it's called. The red dragon of Wales. And there is no official flag of Wales. This is one version of what it could look like. That's the one that I liked, that I chose from Amazon. But there are other versions that are inferior. But yeah, I have no plan on visiting Europe anytime soon. That's not to say I will never visit. I particularly would like to visit the United Kingdom if I ever do go. But I haven't yet. So I have no impressions of Europe other than what I have seen on television and in movies and on the internet. Oh, God. My helicopter hat fell. I spent so long trying to get this stream working. I should have been streaming an hour ago. But for some reason, I have OBS. For some reason, I didn't want to stream with OBS. I wanted to just start with streaming directly to YouTube. But YouTube was like, there's another app that's using your camera, so we can't use your camera. So it's like, okay. And then I troubleshooted the hell out of it. I ended up installing every optional update on my computer. Didn't get around to the drivers because the website for HP's drivers, for some reason, every time I clicked on my computer model, it said that you're using the wrong model, so probably wouldn't have helped anyway. Anyway, eventually I just gave up and started OBS, and here we are, OBS. It's working, I think. Let me double check again. Yeah, apparently 2 people are watching, and audio's coming through. Yep, I can hear the ice in my glass. Okay. It's working. I'm streaming. How do you like that? So, because I knew that nobody would be watching this thing, I figured I'd line up some entertainment to start with. Oh, Mr. Garbage username, what kind of games or hobbies do you enjoy? Well, hobbies, I like making YouTube videos. And, what else? I like playing guitar. I got my 2 guitars today. I'm thinking later on in the stream I can play some of this, or some of this, probably more of this than anything. I like singing. I like doing things with my voice. I like doing voice impressions. I like other people who can do good voice impressions. I like rappers, although I can't really rap myself. But I wish I could rap. But I love singing. I like drinking gin. This stuff is watered down because I put the ice in the glass when I was going to start streaming. And then I spent an hour troubleshooting, and so the ice melted. And so now I have some watered down gin, which is okay. It's actually probably better to start out with that because it can be a little bit harsh in the first few sips. Ben Moen, Ben Moen, that's what it would be in Welsh. Or moan, it's probably moan. Is it mean? That's like when you have a Greek word that the English people pronounce with O-E. Ben mean. And he says, but I am watching. But I am watching. No, nothing before it. Just a conjunction. And then, but I am watching. Okay. My hobbies include deep dives into Marilyn Manson's art. Brown noser. No, yeah, mine too, obviously. I love Marilyn Manson's art. And his music. Have you gotten into his painting? There's a lot of interesting stuff in Marilyn Manson's paintings that I would like to explore. I think I'll explore that when I get around to like Golden Age of Grotesque era, because that's when he had that big art exhibition. I'm mowing the grass. It's mowing like I'm mowing the grass. Okay. Mowing. Mowing. Why did I not think of that one? Did I? I don't remember. Just wanted to congratulate you for hitting 1K. And that's Shy Death Kitten Official. Shy Death Kitten, that's not a bad name. Although you're missing the A in death. And I don't exactly know what's official about it. Like, is there an unofficial Shy Death Kitten? Did you get this as a registered trademark for Shy Death Kitten? Ben Moen says, I would love you to explore his paintings eventually. Love it. Yeah, me too. He did that one, that one that I brought up in, I think it was my Antichrist Superstar video, where it was called Fibonacci, and it had basically what looks like a self-portrait of him, his face lying down with a big hole in his head, and bees flying out of his head. And what's interesting about that is that there's a song in The Pale Emperor, Vampire Fibonacci, blinded by your jealousy. I'm happy to pull my veins out and braid a rope. I don't need hope to know that you died slow. Which one's that? Is that Slave Only Dreams to Be King? So he's talking about Fibonacci there. But then at the beginning of the song, he says, take my money like an ugly bee, covered in my honey, too dumb to see. So clearly there's a connection here between bees and Fibonacci. It might have to do with the whole flower thing, how the Fibonacci sequence, like if you look at a sunflower, the seeds patterned around the sunflower are supposedly geometrically aligned to the Fibonacci sequence. Fibonacci is interesting because he was before the Renaissance. He was like a medieval mathematician and merchant. And I'm actually going to be talking about him in one of my videos about Italy because he's a really important character in history, and he's Italian. And it was really, I think he was one of the earliest people to bring over the modern number system from, the Arabs were using it, but it was really invented by the Indians. And the Arabs got it because of their contact through like the conquests of the Delhi Sultanate, like the Turkic Delhi Sultanate or something in India. But it migrated to Arabia, and that's where the Italians found out about it. And Fibonacci was one of the early adopters of that in Europe. But what's hilarious is that the moronic, or maybe just ignorant men who were in charge of the banking regulations, like the banking, not union, not the guild, in Florence, Italy, they they at one point outlawed use of the Arabic numerals because they thought that they were too easy to forge. They thought that forging calculations with Arabic numerals was easier than the Roman numerals that they were using, which is ridiculous because Roman numerals, there's no logic to it. There's no mathematical logic to calculating with Roman numerals. There's just, it's basically just down to like, the numerals themselves don't have anything to do with the actual number values. And so it's very easy to forge Roman numerals. All you have to do is just write like an extra X or put the V in a different spot, and then boom, like nobody will notice. And so these bankers in Florence were kidding themselves, thinking that, oh no, the real problem is these newfangled Arabic numerals. Anyway, let's see. We've got some. I love your Ben Moen. I love your propeller hat. Me too. I bought it very recently. I'm always looking for new idiotic things to wear that aren't too tacky. Like, there's a lot of stupid hats on Amazon that look like Halloween costumes, and that's not what I'm after. I'm looking for something that's, like, a little bit respectable, but it's just, like, also totally ridiculous. Like that dinosaur costume that I got. Paper Seatbelt. Congratulations on 1,000 subs. Yes. Yeah, I'm happy about that. It's satisfying, to know that at 1,000 times somebody clicked the subscribe button on my channel. And that gives me hope that one day I'll have, like, an actual big following. I'm surprised there's so many comments on here already. I thought I'd be basically talking to no one. That's why we're going to do Douchebag Bible Study in a little bit. I had that prepared because I figured I'm not going to be able to talk to anyone, so I might as well have something to say. Alien 19. Random question. Do you believe in aliens? Yes, I do. An alien is anyone who is not born in the country that you were born in. But more colloquially, an alien refers to an extraterrestrial, someone not born of planet Earth. And I believe in those. However, I am quite skeptical of the claims that people put forth that aliens are able to get to Earth. I guess you could say the thermodynamics of that seem a little bit tricky to me. Like, just even when you travel at light speed, which is theoretically the fastest that anything can travel, theoretically, not just practically, but theoretically, I don't know how that science works. You're still going to be traveling for like decades before you reach planet Earth, if you're in another galaxy, I think. I don't know. Especially, maybe if you're in the Andromeda galaxy, you can get here. But of course, there are other star systems in our galaxy. So maybe if you are in our galaxy, it would take you maybe just a few light years. But still, that's a long way away. And so, I don't know, at this point in the scientific analysis of it, I'm a little bit skeptical about the idea that any kind of race of intelligent beings could create a technology that allows them to get to Earth in a practical, and time-wise, a practical length of time. But considering how limited our understanding is of such things so far, I won't rule it out as a possibility. Ben Moen, this rant about the Fibonacci sequence, the Fibonacci. Manson says Fibonacci, which, why? It's Fibonacci. This rant about the Fibonacci sequence and bees is everything I want from this live stream. Ha. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting what you want. I'm glad you're satisfied, Ben Moen. Mr. Garbage username, favorite horror movie? I highly recommend watching The Return of the Living Dead. That's one I've heard of. Never seen it. I know that it has nothing to do with Night of the Living Dead. It's just because, like, the living dead are returning from the grave. But it sounds like it's a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. I've never seen it. I've never seen any, zombie movies. I guess my favorite horror movie is The Thing by John Carpenter. I'm not a big horror fan, because what I find is that usually horror movies, they rely too much on scares, and so they forget to actually make it a good movie. Like, oh, look at this. We put a guy wielding a knife going after some teenagers, but, like, is it a good movie? And usually they aren't. Like, The Amazing Atheist made his top 10 horror movies recently. And he on the list, he put one that was called, because he's really into schlock, so he put one called Terrifier 2 on the list. And so I was like, okay. For some reason, that one interested me. I guess it's because it's so new, and usually he's into older movies. And so because it's a new horror movie, I was like, okay, I'll watch that. And it was so boring, and it was just nothing but schlock. And I guess I just don't have a good tolerance for schlock. I know a lot of people love schlock. To me, I just find it really boring. That's it. And also, I was trying to eat while watching it, which wasn't the best idea because there was a lot of gore and I don't know. I'm not like, the thing is, I faint really easily with thoughts about disease, even mental illness, but disease or blood or whatever. But when it comes to AIDS, that's a big one for me. Don't talk about AIDS around me. But when it comes to actual gore, seeing organs and blood spurting, that doesn't do much. That doesn't trigger my oh you got to go unconscious right now. It doesn't do that to me. But it is a little bit unpleasant when you're trying to eat while watching it. But I didn't end up finishing that movie. I got 45 minutes into it. I don't really like horror movies, I don't think. Although I do remember when I was a little kid, 8 years old, I would or more 8, 9, I would watch horror, old classic horror movies, monster movies with my dad. That was really fun. I ended up seeing quite a few of those. Let me see. Ben Moen, is there any way you can get a fan to blow on you so that the propeller on your hat spins? I don't think I really want that. I don't want a big stream of air coming at my face. I'll just do that every now and then. That should be good. Paper seatbelt. It's weird. It's not more. Did you say something before? Oh, congrats on 1,000 subs. It's weird. It's not more. Not really. I mean, I've been doing this less than 2 years, and I'm actually really grateful for what I've got, because I have my Antichrist Superstar video has 20,000 views, 21,000 views, I actually think. And that's good. I'm really happy with that. And I think, the stuff that I've made so far is kind of niche. I've mainly just talked about Marilyn Manson. And so I know that there are a lot of Manson fans, but I think that if I want to get more viewers, it's going to be easier once I have more broad topics out there. And so I think my Italy stuff might help me in that regard. Ben Moen, there's a lot of comments heat here because we are all your friends. You're all my friends. I didn't know that. I thought you were my enemies. No, I didn't. I don't actually know anybody who subscribed to me personally. So calling you my friends is a little bit of a stretch. But I guess I guess in a sense you're my friends. Paper seatbelt sounds fun, LOL. I wonder what you're talking about. Are you talking about Terrifier 2, or what are you talking about? I don't know. I don't know the context to that remark. Mr. Garbage username. Will you do more face cam videos in the future? I always enjoy seeing what kind of cool and wacky face paints you do and come up with. Well, most of my videos are. The only ones which aren't really are my Marilyn Manson deep dive videos, because those I like to read directly from my script, because every once in a while that's good, because if I make a video where my face is in front of the camera, then I don't want to have to be reading all the time, and so I want to make it spontaneous. And if I'm reading, it removes the spontaneity, and it's boring, and so yeah, sometimes I do want to not show my face, just so that I can read properly and have that eloquence to it, because I do think I write very eloquent scripts. But yeah, Yeah, definitely. I mean, all of my RAB Roundups. My RAB Roundup is the main thing that I'm doing right now. And the RAB Roundup is, you know, the RAB Roundup is just a face cam video, basically. I even talked in the last RAB Roundup about face cam videos and how people would put gaming footage in their videos, and then they would make a video with their face on camera, and then they were like, "This is a face cam video, ooh, radical." And I was always just like, there's nothing special about that. It's just a normal video. This is just what a video is. I always thought that was funny. Alien 19, I hope one day to meet an alien and just shake its hand if it has one. It's got to have something if it's working with electronics. Yeah, but what that would look like is interesting. I imagine, there's a thing called Convergent Evolution in evolutionary biology, where like a fish and an ichthyosaur and a penguin and a whale, they're in totally different families of the animal kingdom. A fish is a fish. An ichthyosaur is a reptile. A penguin is a bird, and a whale is a mammal. But they all converge. They all have a similar kind of shape to their bodies that allows them to swim in the water. Penguin's probably the most divergent of that because they're also a land animal, as well as a sea animal. But that there is such a thing as convergent evolution. So I imagine, honestly, if we've gotten as far as we are with our hands, I imagine that another alien species would have kind of a convergent evolution to our species, even though it's on a totally different path in evolution. If it manages to create the same kind of effect, if it manages to create a civilization with technology, then I imagine it's going to come up with something similar to the human hand. And I think they probably will have hands. As for like meeting an alien, I think that would be cool. I have sometimes fantasized about meeting aliens, although I do find that the thing is, a lot of people talk about aliens as these abductors, and there's a lot of stories about alien abductions, and I find that very scary. That's like being a lab rat, As much as I like things getting put up my ass, but yeah, I am kind of interested in the idea of meeting an alien. I feel like I would. It would be scary, but I would try to like create some kind of a connection with an alien if I met one. Yakushi. I've seen you before. I know that profile picture. You do comment on my videos sometimes. Good to see the live stream happening. As I frequently say in my comments, your videos, in this case live stream, are always very nice. Well, thank you. Let me give you a kiss. I'm glad you like me. There's that line in Tootsie. Have you guys seen the Dustin Hoffman movie Tootsie? Where he's like, he's at his birthday party, and there's this chick he's hitting on. He's like, "Thank you for liking me. Thank you for liking me." I find that such a funny line. Thank you for liking me. Paper Seatbelt. I liked Hereditary and Midsommar. I did too. I think Hereditary is a better movie. But the thing about Midsommar is I'm a huge fan. I think my favorite movie of all time. Actually, what's funny is I think you asked me if I liked horror movies, what my favorite horror movie was. And I said The Thing by John Carpenter because I consider that a horror movie. My favorite movie was conceived of as a horror movie, but I don't think of it as a horror movie, so it didn't cross my mind. But my favorite movie is The Wicker Man, 1973, with Christopher Lee from the Hammer horror films. And what's his name? Edward Woodward. Great name. Edward Woodward as Sergeant Howie. I even wrote a poem about it. How does it go? It's like, what shall the king, the virgin, say, as Wicker burns his flesh away? Should he try in haste to pray his soul to live another day? Should he shout aloud and rue the way an animal would do? As goats and cattle bleat and moo, what happened to the days we knew? What happened to the days? I think I missed a line in there. I missed a couple of lines. A couplet in there. As singing summer's advent in, the old folk and the children grin. And yeah, should he shout aloud and cry, I do not intend to die, as singing summer's advent in, the old folk and the children grin. So that movie inspired a whole poem out of me. But yeah, I love The Wicker Man. Because that movie, the thing about The Wicker Man, it is like it was designed for me, okay? Because it has British folk music, which I love, which I'm going to play for you tonight, some British folk music if I have the time. It has British folk music. It's made in the 70s, and I love 1970s stuff. That's my favorite decade. And it's hilarious. And it's got paganism, which I love. And I love Great Britain, as evidenced by this flag here. I love Great Britain. I love paganism. It has just like everything that I love. And it also has a naked bitch dancing around. Bang, 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 bang. You remember that song? Please come, say how do the things I'll show to you. A stroke as gentle as a feather. I'll cut your rainbow from the sky and tie the ends together. I love that. I love all the songs in that movie. But what's really great about that movie is that it's hilarious. To me, it's a comedy. It's not a horror movie. To me, it's a comedy. Because the joke is, you watch this policeman, this royal policeman representing Her Majesty the Queen from Scotland, the mainland, go into this island, and he's just a prude. He's just a massive prude, and he's really like just afraid of everything. Like, he sees a bunch of people fucking in a park, and he's like, oh, and then it's just watching his reaction to everything is the joke of the movie. Just watch. It never gets old. I swear, it never gets old. That movie just gets me laughing every time I see it. That part where and it's a really ingenious scene. The part where he enters the schoolhouse, and he opens the girl's desk, and she has this beetle tied to a nail, and the beetle, he goes round and round, and he never finds his way out. Poor creature, poor little thing. and Edward Woodward says, poor thing. Then why'd you do it, girl? And it's funny because that's exactly what they're doing to him. And that's a beautiful bit of foreshadowing, how the whole town is actually treating him like he's this beetle tied to a nail, going round and round. They're stringing him along this whole way, making him think that he's solving a murder case, when what he's really doing is he is making himself the perfect sacrifice. You know, he's making himself the perfect human sacrifice. It's wonderful. It's a great movie. But Midsummer, because you brought up Midsummer, and the reason I'm bringing up The Wicker Man is because Midsummer has a lot of Wicker Man in it. But I didn't think that Midsummer was nearly as good as The Wicker Man. One thing it has over The Wicker Man is that it's much more psychedelic. And I remember, I don't smoke weed anymore. But when I watched Midsummer for the first time, and I was just stoned out of my mind. And that's an amazing way to watch Midsummer, because that movie puts you on a drug trip. It is so psychedelic. There's so many great hallucinatory moments in that film. And it's beautiful in that way. The only issue I have with it, I mean, I do kind of wonder, like, is the stuff that they're portraying, is that accurate to, like, actual things that they've studied from these, like, northern Scandinavian cultures? It didn't really seem like that to me. It might be, but because in the Wicker Man, everything is taken from medieval festivals, which are theorized to have been like vestiges and holdovers from the ancient pagan days. And of course, the Wicker Man itself is something that Julius Caesar wrote about seeing with his own eyes when he fought the Gauls in France. Of course, you might want to take the things that Julius Caesar says with a grain of salt, because he was fighting the Gauls, and his account of the Gallic campaign was essentially a propaganda piece he was writing to send back to Rome. But at the same time, there is a lot of evidence of human sacrifice in various cultures, including the Celts, who, there was a bog man, a guy who was discovered in a bog. I don't remember if it was Hallstatt or somewhere else, but he was in a Celtic culture, and he was found garroted and stabbed and pressed into the mud, which appeared to be a human sacrifice ritual. So there was human sacrifice in Celtic society, according to the archaeological evidence. And so the idea of the Wicker Man is not unrealistic to me. But with Midsummer, the big problem I had with it was that the characters sucked. The characters were all annoying. Except for Florence Pugh, who you just felt bad for. And I liked the bad boyfriend character, because he was a bad boyfriend, and I thought they did a good job at showing him as a bad boyfriend without making him into a total a-hole. He was still kind of like someone you can imagine people still liked, even though he was a bad boyfriend, just because he didn't have that ability to be a good boyfriend because he was too self-centered. And so he felt like a real character, but, it just... None of the characters are really likable, honestly. Even the best ones weren't likable. Whereas in The Wicker Man, I felt like everyone was likable. Every single person, you like them immediately when you see them. Like, even if they're really creepy. They're just hilarious. They have these great personalities, these great actors portraying them. And that I think was what was really missing from Midsummer, was just, especially the vaping guy. He sucked. And then it kind of turned into a slasher movie at some point, which I didn't really appreciate. Like, The Wicker Man was really cool because it was just like, it wasn't really a horror movie at any point to me. There were some creepy moments in it, but it was really kind of a movie about this town, and it kind of challenged you in a way. It's a great movie because Christians can love it, but also neo-pagans or atheists or people skeptical of Christianity can love it for different reasons. Because Christians can love it because they can see, oh, this is the danger of these kind of satanic pagan cults. But then other people can look at it and see, well, actually, the thing that was really putting Sergeant Howie in danger was his lack of perspective and his inability to really empathize with the people who he was investigating. And they can see it as a cautionary tale about what happens when you are too invested in your own cultural values and unable to see things from the perspective of a different culture, which I really appreciate, the nuance in that. Yakushi says, also, I like your hat. It is entertaining. It is. I want to get more silly hats. Yeah. And costumes. I just want to make myself look as ridiculous as possible. That's my goal. What I really want is colored contacts, but I have to go to an optometrist to get those, because if you don't, then they'll like eat into your corneas and destroy your eyes from the outside in, which I don't really appreciate personally. I don't want my corneas destroyed, man. Give me some real contacts. I should plug my laptop in to make sure that it doesn't run out of charge. Alien19 says, what's your favorite childhood movie? So there's two different ways to interpret this question. What's my favorite movie? What was my favorite movie as a child? Or, looking back as an adult, what is now my favorite childhood movie? My favorite movie that I used to watch as a child, but now I still love. I think the latter answer, my favorite movie looking back as a child, would probably be Fantasia, because I saw Fantasia when I was very young. I would always see it at my grandmother's house, because my grandmother had a copy of Fantasia on VHS. And it was just a movie you sat in front of it was an event. It was super long. It was like 2.5 hours long. Sorry. You sit in front of the TV and you just watch this incredible light and color splashing, just beautiful painting, music. It just takes you on this trip. It's an absolute trip. It's an absolute journey. It's utterly beautiful. And I still love it. It's still in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I still absolutely love Fantasia. But if you're talking about my favorite movie as a child, like the movie that I loved the most when I was a kid, and we're talking like before age 10, because I think my taste started to evolve at age 10, then it's The Lion King, which is not one of my favorite one of my favorite Disney movies these days. But I will say that objectively, I do think The Lion King is Disney's most artistically proficient film. Just the technology, the way they were able to create so much drama with the shots and the music. Hans Zimmer's music in this. I got so angry at my dad when I was emailing him. And I mentioned Hans Zimmer at one point. And he said that like he hates Hans Zimmer. And I was like, how could you hate Hans Zimmer? Because I think anybody who composed the Oscar-winning Lion King film score just has a free pass for the rest of his life. He doesn't have to do anything after that, because that film score is so beautiful that just hearing a 30-second snippet of me can send me almost into tears. It's just so moving. And those guys really did an amazing job with that film, artistically, aesthetically, capturing this kind of African feel. It's really epic. But honestly, I gotta say, it's not one of my favorite Disney movies these days, because I think that the story and characters are not quite there. There are other movies, and the sense of humor, not quite there. There are a few really funny moments, like Timon doing the hula dance. But generally, like, I find with Disney movies, I really appreciate a sense of humor and characters and story more. And also, I really like the old animation of the 9 Old Men. Let me see if I can name them all, because my brother's the guy who taught me all this stuff. Les Clark, Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston, John Lounsbury, Eric Larson, Mark Davis, Wolfgang Reitherman. There's 2 more. Milt Call and Ward Kimball. I even mentioned Ward Kimball in a recent video, a recent RAB Roundup. Those are the animators who Walt Disney liked the most. And one thing you'll notice if you watch those really old Disney movies from the 30s to the 1970s, basically, they were kind of dominated by Walt Disney's 9 Old Men. And those guys only got better at their craft as they aged. And what you'll notice is they started out doing a lot of slapstick cartoon animation because Disney was doing short films that were slapstick comedy based. And so they got really good at capturing movement. They became the experts at drawing movement. And when you look at the stuff they did later in their careers, like the 60s and 70s, you see characters like Shere Khan or Madame Mim, or what's that prostitute from The Rescuers? What's her name? Medusa, Madame Medusa. If you look at the way those characters are animated, they're so expressive, just so amazing. Just the craft of it just wows me. And Milt Kahl, I think, is my favorite of those guys. I love Milt Kahl's character animation. He also did Edgar in the Aristocats. And, when I watched The Lion King, there is very clearly great proficiency in the craft of animation in that film. I don't want to denigrate it at all. But there is a certain magic to the Nine Old Men. And I don't think they've ever recaptured it. Ben Moen says, "How dare you reject my friendship?" I'm just too honest, my friend. One thing about me is that I never lie. And if I accidentally lie, I always hope that I catch the lie and correct it before it gets too far. But I don't reject your friendship. I mean, I don't know you. That's the thing, is I just don't know you. So I could be friends with you, but I don't even know who the frick you are. Yakushi says, "You do, in parentheses, write eloquent scripts. I appreciate your style." Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I really, I want to be recognized for my writing. Just text is not my preferred medium because I find that text doesn't interest me as much as video. But there's a lot of writing that goes into videos. And I really love writing, and I think I'm good at it. That's the thing. I think I'm, actually a great writer. Honestly, I think I'm freaking awesome at expository writing. At, nonfiction writing. I think I think I'm top tier. And also poetry. I think I'm an excellent poet. And if you ask me what my favorite poet is, I'll say, this guy, right here, me. Because I don't like other people's poetry. I don't like poetry very much. Honestly. Walt Whitman. I don't like free verse. I hate free verse. In fact, if you're going to find some poetry that I might like, you're going to have to go back to the 19th century, I think, usually. Because I find that, that kind of era, that kind of style, appeals a lot more to me. And I think I tend to write more in that kind of style than what you see today with all these slam poet. I hate slam poetry. Slam poetry is just ranting to a metronome. That's basically what slam poetry is. It's disgusting. Do you remember that viral video of the woman? There was these two Scottish girlies making a webcam video. And one of them's mom, some woman, opens the door on them and is like, "Does none of you know how to flush the toilet after you've had a shit?" And then they were one of them was like, "It wasn't me." And she said, "It was fucking one of you. Disgusting." I love that video. Paper Seatbelt says, "Yeah, I love the Or yay. Y-E-A, in case you don't know, is pronounced yay. Like if you're reading Shakespeare, I learned that in high school. It's pronounced yay. Yay, I love the Manson deep dives. Your mind is really great. Really interesting topic. Well, thank you. Yeah, the deep dives were a lot of fun, and I'm going to make more eventually, but I'm done with them for a while. I'm done with all Manson content until I finish either a video about the Uffington White Horse. I got to remember which left is your left. The Uffington White Horse or Italy. I'm working on a video called The Invention of Italy. It might be several parts. I don't know. But right now I say I'm focusing a lot more on Italy because there's a lot. I feel like that's a more involved project, and so I'm really focusing on it. But if either one of these videos comes out, then I promise the next thing I'm working on is Fundamentally Loathsome Part 3, Mechanical Animals Edition. I swear. But until then, until I come out with something, don't expect nothing. I'm sorry. I love the Marilyn Manson stuff too. Paper Seatbelt says another thing. My favorite ever is anything Harmony Corrine. Harmony Corrine. Corine. What the hell? What the fuck? What? Been obsessed with him since I was like 14. Gummo just really got me. Okay, you're using some... This ain't even Zoomer slang at this point, because I'm a Zoomer. I feel like I'm pretty up to date on Zoomer slang. Gummo, I don't know. The only thing I know from Gummo is the Marx Brothers. They had a guy named Gummo. God. Okay. Yeah, the fifth Marx Brothers was named Gummo. There was Groucho, Harpo, Chico, Zeppo, and Zeppo left after a certain point, so it was just the three of them. But Zeppo was in a few movies, and then Gummo was only on vaudeville. They got rid of Gummo immediately, and then it was just Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and Zeppo. And then Zeppo left, so it was just Groucho, Harpo, and Chico. Yakushi says, I have never seen Gummo. Okay, you guys are talking about Gummo now. But the fact it has a Bethlehem song, a great one in its soundtrack, is already captured. So you're talking about, or is this a... Is this a movie you're talking about? I am totally lost with what you guys... I don't even know what a Harmony Corrine or Harmony Corrine is. I have no idea what that is. Okay, you guys are talking about something. I'm going to ignore those comments. Okay, Foot Stomp Podcast. Here we go. Would you ever be interested in making a video of where Marilyn Manson samples are taken from? I know one of your videos shows the samples from Dogma. That was really cool. So, yeah, I'm just going to do it in my regular deep dive series. Because there are a lot of Marilyn Manson samples, but I don't quite know what to make of all of them. But I always look for, like, what are the samples taken in these songs? Because I find that they often impart a certain meaning that I wasn't aware of. So the samples, yeah, I do pay attention to them a lot. But I don't think I'm going to make a video just dedicated to the samples, because I think the samples come in handy when analyzing the meaning of the lyrics. And I have my own format worked out for that with my deep dives, where I go through the songs and look at the lyrics. So yeah. Samples, I feel like I'm doing that already. Pretty much. And I know you acknowledge that. And yeah, you're talking about the Dogma one, and that was the Last Tango in Paris segment of my last deep dive. And that was That was so much fun because I got to use that classical piece of music from. I got it from the movie Gallipoli because I recently watched that for the second time, and it had this beautiful piece of music at the end of it that I thought would be a really great way to introduce the different segments in that video, because I wanted that video to be just kind of a roundup of all the stuff that I didn't get to in Portrait of an American Family from my other two videos, or technically three, even though I really didn't talk about Portrait very much in my Fundamentally Loathsome video, which is kind of what the deep dives were there to address, was the fact that I had so much to say about Portrait that I didn't talk about in that video for pacing reasons. But I really liked the video making that last deep dive, because I got to do the part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and the last one was called The Last Tango, which I liked because this I considered the kind of the last Portrait of an American Family video of my channel, and so it felt like and it was about the movie Last Tango in Paris and the samples that were used in various songs, and I loved that I was able to then talk about those other songs by looking at them, introducing them through the samples taken from Last Tango in Paris. It was a really, really fun way to do that video. Foot Stomp Podcast says, I just watched Bully the other day. Bully, 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 Bully. I know there is a video game by Rockstar called Bully. I am not aware of any film called Bully. But Paper Seatbelt is aware of that. She loves Bully too. I'm assuming that's a woman. It looks like a woman. Never seen The Wicker Man. Yes, the characters were not great in Midsummer. Yeah, you acknowledge that. Noonian song gives me a heart. I'll give you a kiss. Thank you for all your work on MM. Well, thank you for watching. Noonian Sung. Is that like a Southeast Asian name? Sung? Paper Seatbelt says, I'll have to watch The Wicker Man. Yeah, I recommend it. It's really fun. It's funny, it's fun, it's beautiful, it's sad, it's sadistic. It's quieting, it's casual, it's just it's the perfect kind of movie for me. It just vibes perfectly with my personality. Mr. Garbage username with the Satanic Pentacle. Are there any other tips of videos you want to make but are unsure of making for any reason? Honestly, I'll watch anything you put out because I really like your personality and overall vibe. Well, I love that comment, because that's exactly the kind of thing that I want to see. People loving my personality, because that's what I'm about with this channel. It's just me. It's all about me. It's all about me. Yeah, so any other tips of videos you want to make that we're unsure about making? Let me see if I can pull up. I want to see if I still have that document. There's a document that I had that was all my ideas for projects that I wanted to do, but I'm either unsure about making or would just take a long time to make. Yeah, I want to make a video about how Kwanzaa sucks. Have you ever heard of that black holiday, Kwanzaa? It's like a ripoff of Hanukkah for black nationalists. Who cares? It was like invented in the 1960s. But when I was a kid, I always heard like, oh yeah, there's Christmas and there's Hanukkah and then there's Kwanzaa. But yeah, like, when am I ever gonna want to make a video about Kwanzaa? I don't know. I wanted to make a video about The Wicker Man, talking about all the real the real world influences, like all the real rituals and traditions that they got the Wicker Man from. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a video about the country of Zimbabwe and how there was that election back in the 1970s or 80s, I think it was the 70s, between Ian Smith, who was the Prime Minister of Rhodesia back when it was the white country of Rhodesia, and Bishop Muzorewa, who is kind of like a centrist. He was a black man who wanted to kind of bridge the connection between the blacks and the whites in Zimbabwe. And Robert Mugabe, who eventually won the election, and he was the black nationalist, or I guess he was kind of a Marxist, I think. And what you find is that Robert Mugabe maybe started out okay, but he was president for so long, and he became just so hated in his country just because the economy just tanked. And he just sucked. He was just a terrible president. And now they got a new guy who's also just an awful president. And so I was interested in kind of researching more about Zimbabwe and talking about those guys and that election in particular and what all three of them were offering. I wanted to make a video about vegans on YouTube, like Vegan Gains and Unnatural Vegan and Freely and that vegan couple and that vegan teacher from TikTok, because that's a whole interesting rabbit hole to explore, because I'm vegan and I was really into those guys back in 2017 when I was going vegan for the first time. Yeah, I have a lot of these ideas here. Oh, I wanted to make a video. This one I'm probably gonna make. Just a video about like weird stuff that I noticed in movies and songs. Yeah, I'm gonna make that one soon, I think. I'd like to make a video about like the Jewish question. You know, the JQ on the alt-right, how they talk about the Jews. Like, what are the Jews really up to? I have this idea, like, what if we just asked the Jewish question honestly? Like, okay, what is up with the Jews? See if we can, like, figure it out. Like, why do people hate them? What's the deal with them? Are they really that bad? Just, like, with no bias in it involved. Just, like, honestly, like, what's up with the Jews? What are they doing? Why do people hate them? I'd like to ask that question. Forgiveness for Mark David Chapman. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Mark David Chapman was the guy who shot John Lennon. I'm interested in making a video about him because I find him interesting in that he seems really apologetic for killing John Lennon. He seems like he really regrets it. And he's made peace with everything, and he apologized to J.D. Salinger for being so obsessed with his book, The Catcher in the Rye, and he's apologized to everyone. He became a Christian, and he kind of got over his mental illness when he was in prison. And I wonder, like, can we just be okay with this guy? Can we just let this guy go? Because he's been in prison ever since 1980. And I just wonder, like, can we just forgive him? You know, finally? Like, is that okay? Because I kind of like him. Because he's a guy, you know, he's honest about, he had this horrible mental illness. And he, for whatever reason, felt that he needed to kill a beetle in order to acquire his fame because he felt like he was a nobody and wanted to be somebody. And that's what the Marilyn Manson song, The Nobodies, is referencing. It's Mark David Chapman. And that's where I get my name from. Forever Dirt comes from, yesterday I was dirty, wanted to be pretty. I know now that I'm forever dirt. But yeah, Mark David Chapman. I'll have to make a video about him. I'd be interested in making a video about Joseph Campbell. Seeing like, because a lot of people are influenced by him, like Jordan Peterson, George Lucas, a lot of guys. But like, is he really all that great? Because I do love the guy, and I got a lot out of his TV shows like Mythos and The Power of Myth. But, like, is he really, like, was he really that base? Because he was kind of a conservative, and honestly, almost in, like, an Evolian way. Because Julius Evola, who wrote Revolt Against the Modern World, was this Italian philosopher who was, like, all about transcendence. And he thought that you could transcend... you could reach a state of transcendence by following tradition, because he thought that traditional societies were set up that way for a reason, and they knew what was good. They knew what was going to lead us to pure transcendence of being. And so he thought that, like, we need to get away not just from, like, the current day and go back to, like, because he was writing in the 1950s, so obviously he wasn't nostalgic for the 1950s. But, like, these days people are like, we need to get back to the 1950s. And back then maybe it was the 1870s or whatever. But for Evola, he went back way farther. He was like, no, we need to go back to, like, 2000, 3000 BC. He was seriously revolting against the modern world. And I don't want to characterize Joseph Campbell as an Evolian, because he wasn't. He was more of a Jungian. But Campbell, I think, was kind of a conservative in that he understood life through a mythological lens. And he appreciated the symbolic, kind of archetypical qualities of life in a way that other people of the time, who were revisionists, who were rebellious, who were up-and-coming kind of liberals or Marxists, wanted to kind of reevaluate and deconstruct life. Campbell wanted to reconnect with what was symbolically potent about life. And that makes him kind of distasteful to a lot of left-wing Marxists who are very deconstructionist and want to tear everything down. Maybe not quite to the Maoist level, but they're on that path for sure. And I kind of am interested in making a video about Campbell and analyzing, like, his politics, which is something that people don't really talk about. Also, his book, his most famous book is this one. Oh, God damn it. Caesar fell. No, his famous book is The Hero with a Thousand Faces. And I read this one back in 2016, and I gotta say I was not impressed by it. I thought it was a bunch of gobbledygook, pretty much. It had a lot of stories, a lot of myths in it. It didn't say a lot about them that was very thought-provoking or interesting, and this was written in 1947. It's considered his most classic, his most famous and valued book. I kind of think it's overrated. I kind of think it sucks. And so I want to explore that, because I really do love Joseph Campbell's shows. I really think he was a brilliant guy in his own right. I just don't like this book very much. And so maybe I can reread it and read some other stuff that he wrote and decide, what to actually think of the guy. So that's another thing. Yeah, I have a lot of other videos on this list. I've barely even scratched the surface here, but yeah, I can move on to talking about some other things. Foot Stomp Podcast. Whoa, where's that comment? There we go. Foot Stomp Podcast says, I'll have to check it out too. The Wicker Man looks like. I have it in my collection. Oh, you do? You have my favorite movie in your collection. You should watch it. Why haven't you watched it yet if it's in your collection? Mr. Garbage Username says, plus you always got a cool and interesting perspective on things. Well, thank you. You're so nice, Mr. Garbage Username. You should get a username that's actually not garbage, because you're just so nice. You keep saying nice things about me. I feel warm and fuzzy. Yakushi, Walt Whitman was just boring for me. Yeah, I mean, I recognize his merits, but he's free verse, and, like, there's a limit to how good you can get in free verse, honestly. Like, I just don't think that free verse poetry is very good. I just don't like it. It sucks. It's like, it's just prose, basically, but with, like, idiotic line breaks in it, and indents, and it's like, it's, actually, I find that free verse poetry is often hard to read because they'll just like put line breaks in the middle of sentences. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? I can't read this shit. Do you guys feel that way? I feel like these modern poets just like, they've lost the plot. They've lost the meaning of what poetry is even about. Like, I think rappers these days, like, not the really lame, like, mumble rappers, but, like, the good rappers. I feel like they are more in touch with the true nature of poetry than these free verse poets are, or the slam poets. Yakushi says, I like free verse, but almost no one knows how to do it well. As I see it, those who are good free versers are those who already have a good domain of poetic meter. Interesting. Because I always thought that Walt Whitman was good, but you say he's boring, and you like free verse. Forgive me, I have allergies. So that's interesting, because I remember reading some Walt Whitman thinking, this is like objectively good poetry, I just don't really like it very much. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree that nobody knows how to do it well. The thing is, I'm not totally closed-minded against free verse, but I've just never seen any free verse that I liked, ever. Yakushi also says, many new writers seem to regard free verse as an absence of those techniques of meter. I wouldn't see it quite as such, otherwise anyone could convert texts like research reports into a poem. Yeah, and that's the problem I find, is that typically prose becomes poetry way too easy. You know, like you're reading what's supposed to be poetry, and it's like, you know, you could just read this, you could just write this without line breaks, and it would just be prose, and it wouldn't be good, you know? I mean, what could make such a conversion as some kind of avant-garde move, but being avant-garde does not mean being good or interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And Noonien Sung says, Noonien Sung is a character in Star Trek. He's the roboticist that developed Data the android. Okay. I know about Data. I've been interested in Star Trek for a while because I really like the Vulcans and I like Spock. But I haven't actually seen any Star Trek other than that one movie, Into Darkness, which sucked. But like every Star Trek fan knows that Into Darkness is not really like a representative movie of Star Trek. It's J.J. Abrams. And J.J. Abrams ruined those new Star Wars movies. I actually think The Last Jedi was the best of those three. I think Rian Johnson should have had the whole reign of the series. Any advice on how to finish projects, videos, etc.? I tend to work on my projects for a long time and have a hard time publishing. Well, what projects are you making? Are you making videos or writing projects? Because Because I have trouble finishing things too. But I find that at a certain point, I think about the people who are watching me. And I think they're expecting something. So I gotta just put this out at some point. And that gets me through it. That pushes me forward. But I'll agree that finishing projects is hard. It is very hard. But, yeah, I don't know what your situation is. Because I find that, reading and research it's getting a lot easier for me. But I've had trouble with it in the past. Oh, I should turn on my light. Hold on. I have a studio light that might make it easier to see me. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. La Sombra says, I watch your video. I watch your videos with an apostrophe. There shouldn't be an apostrophe there. I watch your videos because you have a fascinating mind. Looking forward to any of your future videos with an apostrophe. Don't put apostrophes in plurals. You don't have to do that. Plurals are just S, no apostrophe. Apostrophe is for possessives, not plurals. That's why it's there, is to distinguish between plurals and possessives. Or genitives. Looking forward to any of your future videos and or live streams. Shem Hamfarash Hail Forever Dirt. What's... I know that Shem and Ham are two sons of Noah. But I don't know what Shem Hamfarash means. But you are hailing me. Yakushi says, also, what do you think about the Golden Age of Grotesque? The Marilyn Manson album, obviously. Personally, I found it to be a tad underwhelming and tiresome musically. Yes. Dude, it sounds like strip club music. It sounds like whenever I'm listening to it, I just imagine a pole dancer. That's what it sounds like. It's horrible. It's like all electronic. Yeah, it's garbage. There are some songs that I like. I like the songs at the beginning of the track list, like "Dol Dagabuzz Buzz Ziggity Zag, God My Grotesque Burlesque Drag, Dol Dagabuzz Buzz Ziggity Zag, God My Grotesque Burlesque Drag." I like "This Is the New Shit." Everything has been said before. Nothing left to say anymore. When it's all the same, you can ask for it by name. Babble, babble, bitch, bitch, rebel, rebel, party, party, sex, 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 and don't forget the violence, blah, blah, blah. Got your lovey-dovey silent, only stick a stupid slogan in. Everybody sing along. Babble, babble, bitch, bitch. Mob Scene is okay. I actually think that probably the best song on that album is Golden Age Grotesque. Because I think that's the one that captured what he was going for with that whole kind of burlesque cabaret vibe. That like 1930s Golden Age of Hollywood Weimar cabaret mesh that he was going for. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, generally the album isn't good. Once you get past those first few tracks, it just devolves into crap. Haters call me bitch, call me faggot, call me whitey. But I'm something you will never be. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's horrible. And Paranoir, I don't need a reason to hate you the way I do. The last thing I want to hear Manson do is whine about his girlfriend. Boo. That post-singing cough had me laughing. You're going to hear a lot of that today. Because I'm coughing, I'm singing, I'm drunk. Nudian Soong says, have you seen A Grotesque Evening with Marilyn Manson? Yes, I have, and I actually pulled footage from that in one of my recent videos when I was talking about my monkey talking about his art exhibition and, well, no, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the idea of the ego and the self. When he says in My Monkey, he says, what I make is what I am. I can't be forever. So I kind of pulled from that footage of him showing off his paintings in A Grotesque Evening with Marilyn Manson, because he would often make self-portraits. And so, like, there's this literal idea of what I make is what I am. He makes these self-portraits that are a representation of himself. And he's showing off his work, and I felt that was good visual imagery to go along with what I was talking about. But yeah, I have seen that. It's a very interesting little documentary. Specifically, the 3 a cappella songs he sung. It's a pretty unique period in Marilyn Manson history. I like the look. I don't think he did any a cappella in that documentary. I know he did a performance of the Golden Age of Grotesque in that documentary, but I don't remember any a cappella stuff. But yeah, it is a very unique period in Marilyn Manson history. I just wish the album that went along with it was better, because I really loved the vibe he was going for, the aesthetic he was going for. And I wouldn't have minded if he had kept going with that for another album, just to refine it a little bit more. Yeah. Noonian Soong says, the acapella is my favorite of his, easy to sing as well. Yeah, I wonder what you're talking about. What acapella are you talking about? Because I'm not familiar with any acapella. I just remember him singing the Golden Age of Grotesque when he was doing that burlesque show with his wife. He sang Golden Age of Grotesque, and that was kind of cool. I don't remember it being acapella, though. Footstomp Podcast says, I have it in my collection because all my movies are pirated movies someone gave me, LOL. Well, there you go. You should watch it. It's really good. But I wonder what version you have, because there are multiple versions of the Wicker Man. My favorite, well, I don't know. I haven't seen all of them. I've only seen one of them. I've seen the one that's on Amazon. And the problem I have with it is it doesn't have the Gently Johnny song, which is a beautiful song. And there's actually an instrumental rendition of Gently Johnny that's in the movie when he's watching the guys and gals having sex in the park. And he's disgusted. He's like, ugh! And then goes back into the pub, and it's really funny. But I haven't seen the version that actually has the scene where they're singing, where Paul Giovanni is singing Gently Johnny. That would have been I wish that were still in the version that's on Amazon, because there is a version of that movie that has an alternate opening where you see him in the like this Anglican church setting, and then he goes off in his airplane to Summer Isle. The version that I know, he's already on the plane to Summer Isle, and that one, I think that's the perfect way to start the movie. You don't need any of that stuff in the beginning, because it's unnecessary. Yakushi says, I like the imagetic part of that era, Golden Age of Grotesque, too. All the hats and the suits please me. I've never heard the word imagetic, but I like it. Mr. Garbage Username says, I gotta get going. Love the stream. You should do this more. Have a good night. Well, thank you very much. I loved your comments in the stream. Noonian Soong says, at Yakushi, agreed. I agree too. Yakushi says, I do recognize Whitman's quality as well. He just doesn't quite appeal to me as an author. I agree. Doesn't appeal to me either. You're not alone. On it sounding like strip club musically, exactly. Yeah, I can totally imagine like kaboom, kaboom. That's yeah. It sucks. Alec Finch says, I wanted to send a shout out. I'm on lunch right now. I love the content, bro. Can't wait for the Mechanical Animals video. Interesting. What time zone are you in? Because right here in my time zone, it's 7:04. It's interesting that you would be at lunch right now. Noonien Sung says, oh, I probably misused the word a cappella. I don't know anything about music. Yeah, a cappella means without music accompaniment. So it would just be him singing on his own with just his voice. Or you can have other people with their voices alongside you. But it's just without any instruments. Noonien Sung says, I mean, technically. Alec Finch says, I saw there's a hidden bloody video for The Long Hard Road Out of Hell. I hope you'll get to see it someday. A bloody video for The Long Hard Road. See, I'm not a fan of that song, honestly. That song does nothing for me. I think the video is kind of cool. I like seeing naked Manson being all feminine. I think that's kind of fun. But, like, I don't like the song, so I don't really think about that song very much. But apparently there's a bloody video that's hidden. There's a banned bloody version of the video. Alien19 says, I think I once saw the bloody version on Daily Motion, but I could be mistaken. Yeah, that's where you would find it. Alec Finch says, Golden Age of Grotesque was a miss because of no Twiggy for me. Yeah, I guess Twiggy did leave around that time. Yeah. Because then he joined 9 Inch Nails, and then he had his own band, Goon Moon. But then he rejoined Marilyn Manson and then was fired from Marilyn Manson after the rape allegations came out, which was hilarious because then a couple years later they came out against Manson himself. Alex Finch says it's 10 p.m. I work second shift. I won't be home until 5 a.m. So you're talking about your lunch break? Okay, so you're even later than me. How are you later than me? What, are you in Hawaii? Or no, I get the time zones mixed up. You're backwards. You're in the east. Okay. Yeah, I had my time zones mixed up there for a second. Yeah. You won't be home until 5 a.m. So you're a real night shift worker, aren't you? Because my shifts end at 9:30. At least. At most. 9:30. I usually get out a little bit before then. Noonien Sung says it was just him singing to piano players on a piano. Yeah, that's not a cappella, that's accompanied music. Accompanied singing. Speaking of which, my grandfather goes to sleep at 9:30. And so I still have about an hour and a half before he's asleep to sing. So maybe I should sing something. I'm a bit drunk right now. So let's see if I can do this. Maybe I should tune it a bit. You're making cars for Toyota, Alec Finch? That's cool. That's more than I'm doing. I'm making videos for YouTube. Yakushi says if Manson were to confirmedly, I love that word, confirmedly put out a new song, what would you, 1, expect it to be, 2, want it to sound like? I don't care what it sounds like as long as it sounds good. I like the sound of We Are Chaos. I thought that was a good album. I wouldn't mind if he did more in that vein. I honestly, I'm not really into heavy music as much as like mellow music. So like if he does something more mellow, I would totally be up for it. Because I don't really like heavy music anyway. Manson is an exception for me. Lyrics wise, I just don't want it to be like High End of Low. I don't want it to be like lowbrow, just complaining about garbage, complaining about his girlfriend. I want it to be highbrow. I want it to be really intelligent, with lots of metaphors, with lots of symbolism. And ideally, a concept album. He hasn't made a concept album since Hollywood, and that would be awesome. Alright, I got it tuned, I think. Is that a dead cat on the top left corner shelf? No, what is that? It looks like it's a sheet or a pillowcase. It looks like it's a pillowcase next to a statue of the Egyptian god Horus. That's funny. We Are Chaos was in a way very hopeful sounding to me. I think going forward that will be what's to come. I hope so. How does it go? How does that song go? Say in the chat, how does this song go? Paint you with my love. A honky-tonk devil glittered in, where royal rats in kitten skin, and all the blondes drop their panties and cry to the father's first lullaby. So let me paint you with my love, with my love, with my love. Yeah, well that does the 50s chord progression. Oh, baby, baby, how was I supposed to know? Oh, smalbart. How does that go in Icelandic? Því var ég að vita það, I think. I just remember that Icelandic comedian. What's his name? God, what's his name? There's an Icelandic comedian who did that. He was like, what if we took English songs and then translated them literally into Icelandic, and it was hilarious. Because, like, they don't say smalbart, they don't say baby in Icelandic as, like, a pet name for someone you're fucking. So, it just sounds ridiculous. Var heja been say bralad. Yeah, they have comedy in Iceland. What are you talking about? Var heja been say brankjó. Var heja been say bralad. Kam ye by killy crankjó. And ye had been were I having, you had not been say cantio, and ye had seen what I had seen on the braes o killy crankio,
I fought at land, I fought at sea. At time I fought my auntie, oh, but I met the devil and Dundee on the braes o' Killiecrankie, oh. Ye had been where I had been.
Freaking capo.
You had not been say cunty, oh, and ye had seen what I had seen on the braes o' Killiecrankie, oh. Oh,
No. How's it go? It's not Fi Mackay. What's the one before that? Frick. Alright, I'll skip that verse.
O Fi Mackay, what gart ye lie? Leave a bush against the brankie, oh. You better cast King Willie's low than come by Killiecrankie, oh. And ye had been where I had been. You had not been say cunty, oh, and ye had seen what I had seen on the braes o' Killiecrankie, oh.
Alright, what is that verse that I was thinking of? Fuck it.
It's nae shame, it's nae shame, it's nae shame to shank you. The sewer sleighs on Athol braes, and the deals at Killiecrankie, oh. And ye had been where I had been. You had not been say cunty, oh, and ye had seen what I had seen on the braes o' Killiecrankie, oh.
Alright, let's catch up. Now that's proper heavy music. Alexei Laiho was a phenomenal guitar player. Check out his stuff. Probably won't. I don't know. I'm not much into guitarists. There was that one Japanese guitarist who was just like freakishly good. I was kind of into his stuff for a while, but like, I don't know. I'm not really a guitar guy. I play guitar, but I'm more of a singing guy. I cried for a week straight when he died. Oh, he died. Wow. Honestly, he was sloppy for a good portion of his career, but he was in the middle of a bit of a comeback. Okay. I don't know who you're talking about. You guys are having your conversation. Do you know when episode 3 is coming out? I don't, actually. I have no idea. No idea whatsoever. It'll come out when it comes. Couldn't tell you when. Because I gotta make my a video about Italy or a video about the Uffington White Horse. And so whenever one of those comes out, I'll start working on part 3. But part 3 is going to come out when it's going to come out.
How often haunting the highest hilltops, I scan the ocean, your boat to see. Will it come tonight, love? Will it come tomorrow? Will it ever come, love? Take comfort me. Eravata sta horo so fare thee well, where'er ye be.
Here's another song I was working on. It's literally going to come out when it comes out, and you can't tell me I'm literally using that word the wrong way. No, I can't. I've complained about that in the past, but I cannot complain about it now because you are using it in the right way. Here's what I was looking for. Here's a song I'm practicing. I think I'm going to make like a full-blown cover of this song. I think I'm going to be like, I'm going to do like multiple tracks, and I'm going to try to make an actual song out of this. But,
well, there's not a single K within my name, and I barely have a tenth of your YouTube fame. And you've toured the world, albeit with your choir, and you surely have your sets set much higher. Okay, what's the point? I'll explain. You see, we're both music majors, therefore certifiably insane. I heard a story where you stalked a particular celebrity, and I guess I was just wondering, would you do the same for me? Would you stalk me like you stalked Bruce Willis? Or would you get in your car and chase me down the street? Maybe I can creep you out by singing the song, and maybe you can creep me out by following me all day long, and maybe we won't seem so creepy when we finally meet.
That's probably the only verse I can do semi-decently of that song. Okay. Yakushi says, I remember thinking as a kid, still beginning to learn English as a second language, that erotic slash romantic usage of the word baby was quite creepy. I remember feeling weird about it when I was like 7 or 8 years old when I first got into pop music. I was listening to like the Beatles and Jerry and the Pacemakers and Freddie and the Dreamers, if you remember them. Even like the Kinks, they had that song, Set Me Free, Little Girl, Little Girl. I mean, I don't know. It's just like, I get it. I get why they do that. But, like, does nobody see what's maybe, like, weirdly objectionable about it? Alec Finch. All right, Dirt, and everyone else, that's it for me. Thanks again for all the content. I always learn something new from them. Be good, everyone. Have a drink for me. Well, I've had plenty. I'm pretty advanced in that area. Here we have a new commenter. Ki or Chi. Depends on if you're pronouncing it in Greek or not. Okay, thanks for that, man. Hope you're doing good. Love your work. Yakushi says, eventually I found out the same usage happens in my first language, but that was years after learning about its use in English, so I was already used to it. Weird. That's weird. I guess maybe you don't have as much pop music in your language, because for some reason in pop music it's just everywhere. It's just a virus. just like accidental pedophilia everywhere in pop music. Like, what's the deal with that? Alien 19. You're a very epic guy forever, Dirt. Can't wait for whatever your next video will be. I'm heading out. Yeah, my next video, what will it be? Ooh. Tafsa10 says everyone uses literalmente the wrong way in Portuguese as well. Because we gotta do what Americans are doing. Yeah, that's your disease, man. Don't copy us. You don't gotta do what we're doing. Literalmente, keep that to what's literalmente. You know what I mean? Tafsa10 says, Steely Dan, quote, so fine, so young, tell me I'm the only one. No, oh. See, my dad's a Steely Dan fan, so he would know what you're talking about, but I don't. I've heard some Steely Dan, but I don't know that song. I mean, honestly, that one doesn't bother me, because everyone likes a youngster. Yakushi is Brazilian. Because you look like a weeb. Are you a Brazilian weeb? Your name doesn't sound very Brazilian to me. Alright. The Douchebag Bible by T.J. Kirk, The Amazing Atheist. How many of you guys know The Amazing Atheist? I talk about him a lot on my channel, and I love the guy. But he wrote this book. Which is supposed to be a book, but calling it a book is generous. Because look at the typeface in this. Is this not the biggest, most spaced out typeface you've ever seen? And this book is just terrible. I bought it because I was like, okay, eventually I gotta buy this thing because I love The Amazing Atheist videos so much. But it's like the worst book ever. He was pretty popular back then. He was. I started watching him in 2013 when I was 14 years old. And I just fell in love with him immediately. I think his stuff is brilliant. Dirt, how are you introduced? I like that my name is Dirt now. Dirt, how are you introduced to Irish music? I'm not quite sure, actually. I remember I watched that movie The Luck of the Irish on Disney Channel, and that had a little bit of Irish music, and I remember being really entranced by it in like a really visceral way back then. But I don't know like what exactly got me into Irish music. I think I just always kind of knew that like this was something that I might get into at one point, and so I looked it up one day. And I think the first song I was introduced to was The Star of the County Down by Orthodox Celts. Which is, as far as I know, like Orthodox Celts are like the only band that made Irish music that did it, that actually had proper music videos, like MTV quality music videos made out of it. But what's funny is that they were Serbian, not Irish. That's why they were called Orthodox Celts. They were Serbians who were doing Irish music. But yeah, after that, then I listened to Sound the Pibroch by the Corries, which it goes something like this. I'm not going to play the whole song. But it's like... Sound the pibroch loud on high,
Regiona groats te the isle sky. Let every clan their slogan cry. Rise and follow Charlie. Hatchin fom fom fom. Hatchin fom fom fom. Hatchin fom fom fom. Rise and follow Charlie from every hill and every glen. Are gathering fast the loyal men. They grasp their dirks and shout again. Hurrah for Royal Cherry. Hatchin fom fom fom. Hatchin fom fom fom. Hatchin fom fom fom. Rise and follow Cherry. I could go farther than that, but that's the one that got me into Scottish music. And if you want to know Star of the County Down, that's near Bambridge town in the county down one morning last July. From the Bowring Green came a sweet Colleen, and she smiled as she passed me by. She looked so sweet from her two bare feet to the sheen of her nut brown hair. Such a coaxing mouth, sure I shook myself for to see I was really there. From Bantry Bay up to Derry Quay, and from Galway to Dublin town, no maid I've seen like the brown Colleen that I met in the county down. As she onward sped, sure I scratched my head and I looked with a feeling rare. And I says I to a passer-by, it's the maid with the nut brown hair. He smiled at me and he says he, that's a gem of Ireland's crown. Young Rosie McCann from the banks of the bench, she's the star of the county down. From Bantry Bay up to Derry Quay, and from Galway to Dublin town, no maid I've seen like the brown Colleen, that's the star of the county down. Anyway, that's the first Irish song I learned from a few Serbians. But yeah, that's how I was just like looking up on YouTube one day Irish music, and I found Star of the County Down, and then I found Sound the Pibroch by the Corries, and then I was just like, alright, Irish and Scottish, I just love it now. You mentioned in a video you were into ML channels at some point. Who are you watching? Are you talking about Marxist-Leninist channels? Because I don't think I was ever into a Marxist-Leninist channel. I was into Vosh, who is an anarcho-communist. Or an anarcho-syndicalist, rather, actually. I don't know I was into any Marxist-Leninist channels. I consider communism or socialism, I consider that kind of all under the umbrella, you know, like anarcho-syndicalist. Yeah, weren't you? No, I don't think I was ever into any Marxist-Leninist. There's this one annoying Marxist-Leninist I discovered named Ben something. He's like a trans woman guy. I don't know how these people work. Dude, I'm tired of the whole trans. That's like a whole other topic. I thought you mentioned Marxism. Well, yeah, Vosh identifies as a Marxist. Sorry, I'm drunk. He identifies as a Marxist, but he principally calls himself an anarcho-syndicalist. But Marxist is another term he will call himself. Personally, myself,
I don't think I am knowledgeable enough to call myself a Marxist, because there's a lot to Marxist theory that I just simply don't understand. I just don't. I haven't educated myself in that area enough. But, yeah, Vosh definitely identifies as a Marxist. But he's principally an anarcho-syndicalist, like Noam Chomsky is also an anarcho-syndicalist, I believe. Lucas says Vosh is not a Marxist. He is a Marxist, actually, because I remember watching a video where Cult of Dusty was interviewing him. I wonder how many of you remember Cult of Dusty. Although he may call himself one. Okay, well, that's semantics, and I don't really like semantics. I don't like labels. I don't like how people try to constrict and gatekeep based on labels. Like, I don't care what you call yourself. You call yourself a liberal, you call yourself a Marxist, you call yourself whatever. Like, honestly, oh my god, my tack fell out. Hold on. I just noticed my tack fell out. Ugh. Oh, God. Damn it. There we go. No, the thing is that I identify with the terms liberal, socialist, progressive, and socialist. And even... No, I said socialist twice. What am I thinking? Ugh. Liberal, socialist, progressive, and communist. Those are my 4 terms that I will identify with. Even though they might not all describe me exactly. But I find that those terms are descriptive of me in some sense. Yeah. So I don't really vibe with people who try to gatekeep based on language, based on like what people identify as, based on labels. Like, I can understand people making fun of Tim Pool because he calls himself a liberal when he's obviously conservative, because he's obviously a grifter. I can definitely understand that. But when it comes to Vosh, he's obviously read a lot on Marxist theory. He's read a lot on anarchist theory. He has his own ideas about that, and I respect that. Lucas says, maybe you want to synthesize those things? Well, I think at my core, liberal is letting people do what they want. That's essentially what liberalism is. And I feel like I connect a lot with that. But I also connect a lot with socialism. And so, yeah, I do want to find a synthesis between liberalism and socialism. And I think that socialists these days, young socialists, tend to really be against the idea of liberalism. They tend to hate the term liberalism. They tend to be saying liberalism is akin to fascism. And that's why I made that joke in my fascism video where I said that no ideology on the left is more hated and less understood than fascism except for liberalism. Because basically liberalism is understood as akin to fascism on the left. Whereas an actual fascist, if you talk to an actual fascist, they will tell you that liberalism is like the exact opposite of fascism. Because fascism is a totally collectivist ideology that's all about identification of the individual with the state. Whereas liberalism is about identification of the individual as separate from the state. And as the state as being as representative of the individual as possible. Whereas the fascist is all about identifying with the collective. Yakushi says, have you ever heard of National Bolshevism? I have. I remember I had a laughing fit when I first saw their flag. Yeah, because their flag is a Nazi flag, but the swastika is replaced with a hammer and sickle for Marxism, or communism, rather. And yeah, it is funny to see that. Now, I did ask a guy on Reddit who identified as a National Bolshevik on the Fascism Reclaimed subreddit. I asked him to tell me about National Bolshevism, like what he thought about it. And he said it was a German thing, whereas I thought it was a Russian thing. So I don't know which one of us is misinformed, but I always thought National Bolshevism was a Russian origin. But yeah, National Bolshevism, it's sort of like an attempt to find a synthesis of National Socialism and Communism, or Bolshevism, which is honestly, that's kind of what Strasserism was too. And I wonder why they don't call themselves Strasserists or Strasserites. I wonder why they make a differentiation between National Bolshevism and Strasserism. Lucas says, I'm against liberalism, but I agree that it isn't the same as fascism. Well, thank you. Thank you! Because a lot of leftists don't understand the difference. Lucas says, and it does irritate me that people conflate those. Yeah, they couldn't be farther apart. Like, they couldn't have any less to do with each other. But because they both involve capitalism to some degree, but I think fascism is more of a third position ideology in principle. In practice, maybe not. I don't know. I would have to do more research into that, and I plan on doing so. But in principle, it's more of a third positionist ideology, whereas liberalism is much more capitalist. But I'm a socialist, and I consider myself a liberal. And so I feel like I agree with the social values of liberalism, and I think that drives most of my mentality regarding politics. And so I'm not a capitalist, but I do appreciate liberalism, and I agree with the fascist philosopher Alfredo Rocco when he said that liberalism and socialism, that socialism is a natural evolution from liberalism, that the one comes from the other. I totally agree with that. I think that makes perfect sense historically. Tafsa says, it's not that it's akin, it's that they serve the same interests, and when under pressure, liberals would rather side with fascists. I kind of agree with that. I see where you're coming from. But I feel like so many socialists will take what you're saying and then go a step farther in saying that liberalism and fascism are basically the same. And I think that a lot of that honestly comes down to neoliberalism. Because if you look at like the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet in Chile, he was like known as like one of the most neoliberal politicians of his era. And so, and a lot of leftists don't really know how to distinguish authentic fascism from straight up just regular dictatorships that are not necessarily fascist. And so they'll look at Augusto Pinochet and they'll think, well, that's a fascist. And then they'll look at his ideology economically and they say that's neoliberalism. And then they'll make the connection, neoliberalism equals fascism. And that's just, I think terminologically, that kind of misses the core of liberalism and it misses the core of fascism and what makes those two ideologies distinct. But yeah, neoliberalism is mostly an economic philosophy. That's mostly what it's about. And so, I obviously, as a socialist, I have a huge bone to pick with neoliberalism and Pinochet and his pronouncements. Lucas says, but it's in all of us, basically. Okay, I've lost the plot of what you're talking about. Has anyone ever checked out Deleuze? Good chapter in one of his books on the topic. So Deleuze, the only thing I know about him is that he was a Nietzschean scholar, because he translated some Nietzsche into English, I think. And I have studied Nietzsche for the purpose of studying Marilyn Manson's Antichrist Superstar. I read Twilight of Idols, and that was an interesting book. I didn't understand all of it. I'll admit, I didn't understand all of it. But I think Nietzsche is an amazing philosopher. I really love Nietzsche from what I've seen of him. I think he was an edgelord, and I think he was someone who didn't care if he was properly understood. He was more interested in speaking to people who could understand him, whether he was easily understood or not. And I respect that, because I see that. I respect that in a lot of people. I respect that in Manson too. And I know that Manson took a lot from Nietzsche. But yeah, I've never read Deleuze. I've only read Nietzsche. And I've heard about Deleuze via Nietzsche. Lucas says I'm talking about fascism. Yeah, I've never read Deleuze's perspective on fascism. Interesting thing about Nietzsche, though, is that Nietzsche's sister ended up being the arbiter of his estate after he died. And Nietzsche's sister ended up kind of partnering with Martin Heidegger, who, as I understand it, was more of a Nazi kind of philosopher. And so Martin Heidegger read a lot of kind of Nazi ideology into Nietzsche that ended up becoming associated with Nietzsche due to Heidegger's influence. So it's interesting to me that you talk about Deleuze talking about fascism. I wonder what Deleuze has to say about the subject. Tasfa. Have I been saying Tasfa this whole time? Or Tafsa this whole time? It's Tasfa. Tasfa 10. It's not just about economics. It's like how liberal states refused to ally with the USSR before World War II broke out to prevent the spread of Nazism, even though Stalin continually reached out and pleaded. Yeah, and that sucks, man. And the thing is, I hate Stalin, and I hate the whole... Honestly, I don't like Marxism-Leninism altogether, but I especially hate how it became this kind of perversion of Marxism, as it kind of was forced to be due to the influence of the capitalist oligarchy. But I think it's so sad that these revolutionaries couldn't give up on their idea of a beautiful socialist revolution enough to realize that what they were doing in depriving the people of democracy was undermining the very fabric of what Marxism meant. And that saddens me. And I totally understand it. I understand why that happened. But it resulted in the rise of people like Stalin, who was vicious and nasty. And the liberal states, yeah. I mean, they did refuse to ally with the USSR because their financial interests were against it. And I understand that, but it's sad. It's sad. Lucas says, I don't think Deleuze translated Nietzsche into English. He didn't speak very good English. Okay, maybe I was wrong about that. Yeah. I know that he definitely talked about Nietzsche, though, because I've read about him in Nietzsche books, in introductions to Nietzsche books. Lucas says, I think you would like Deleuze forever. Well, tell me a little bit about Deleuze. Like, what were Deleuze's ideas? I'd be interested in hearing. Yakushi says, didn't Nietzsche's sister also downright change some of his writings in order to introduce anti-Semitic tones into them? I don't know about that, but I know that she published his book called Power of the Will, I think it was called, I'm thinking of Leni Riefenstahl. What am I thinking of? Will to Power. That's Nietzsche. She published Will to Power, which is essentially just Nietzsche's notes. He didn't even turn that into a book himself. It was just his notes that he had written about Will to Power. And I know that Nietzsche scholars look at that and they say, well, I wouldn't want my unpublished notes to be turned into a book posthumously, because in your notes you can say anything. In your notes, that doesn't involve necessarily a lot of critical reflection and editing. So a lot of these Nietzsche scholars say, well, we only rely on what Nietzsche actually published. So Will to Power is not an official Nietzsche text. And I really agree with that idea. I haven't read Will to Power, but I'd like to. But it's the kind of thing that needs to be read with a grain of salt. Because I wonder, how much Nietzsche's sister's editing. Studio disconnected? What the hell? Reconnection successful, okay. You might have seen a lag from OBS, but apparently we have reconnection. La Sombra, same could be said about Mao Zedong. Are you talking about Stalin? Because I hate the whole cultural revolution thing that he did. Because I know that the whole idea of cultural Marxism kind of comes from Antonio Gramsci, the Italian leader of the Communist Party. And I think his idea was very different from Mao's ridiculous. Because Mao in the 60s did that whole cultural revolution thing where it was like, okay, we have to not only get people systemically, but we have to get them ideologically. And so we have to get the youth to embrace the revolution wholeheartedly. And it ended up resulting in them destroying a lot of traditional Chinese culture, which these days the Chinese government has tried to revive a lot, because now the Chinese government is not communist, even though they're nominally communist. They're nationalist. The CCP is a nationalist party. And so they're trying to revive a lot of traditionalist national culture that they destroyed in the Cultural Revolution. It's horrible. Lucas says, Deleuze has a lot of ideas, LOL, but one big thing is overcoding and decoding. Machines that drive segmentation, differentiation, and therefore history. Wow. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'd like to know more. Tasfa says, I disagree, but it has to do with different conceptions of democracy. Just being able to vote isn't the be-all, end-all of democracy. Economic democracy is a thing, and there's none of that under capital. Yeah, but unless you have governmental democracy, I don't think you can have genuine economic democracy. Because what happened when they didn't have governmental democracy is that any form of democratic spirit just disapparated, and it became just an even more repressive version of what they already had under the Tsarist government. And maybe they made attempts to ameliorate the sufferings of the poor impoverished, of the proletarians, but ultimately the ideology of Marxism was completely subverted in that. Because if you're trying to create a revolution in a capitalist society in only one country, you're going to have to deal with all the other capitalists around you trying to subvert the revolution, which they did militarily in 1919, and they did economically ever since then. And so I get it. I get why you would want to subvert democracy in that situation, but I don't think that economic democracy is ever going to happen unless you have an actual democratic philosophy of government. Lucas says he's famous for the idea of a body without organs, too. God damn, you're talking about some stuff that I don't know what you're talking about. Overcoding, decoding machines, segmentation, differentiation, body without organs. My God, you got to elaborate a little bit, because this stuff is just over my head. Yeah, Kushi, I didn't know that fact about the scholars. Interesting. Oh, you're talking about the Nietzsche scholars? Yeah. Yeah, like Nietzsche scholars are not in favor of taking posthumous Nietzsche material for granted. Because they understand, because they are themselves scholars like Nietzsche was, and they understand the method that goes into note-taking, and how not everything that goes into your notes is going to necessarily be something that you agree with ultimately. It's just something that maybe you had an idea for. But then, like, on further evaluation, before publishing, you realize, I don't totally agree with this. Maybe I'll rethink this. Lucas says, so a body that doesn't have a machinic interrelations / assemblages. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it. Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth, pal. Anyway, I really recommend the chapter Micropolitics from 1000 Plateaus, as I said before. One of the best essays on fascism I read recently. I'll bookmark that. Hold on. I'm going in my browser. What's it called? 1000 Plateaus, Micropolitics. Okay. I put a tab on that on my browser. So, there you go. Tasfa says, I'd argue you can't have governmental democracy under capital either. See, this is the chicken before the egg. Because I feel like you can't have economic democracy unless you have governmental democracy. And I understand what you're coming from, because the capital owners have a vested interest in keeping democracy from happening in the workplace, from happening under capital. And so that's a value judgment that you have to make. But I honestly, ultimately, I feel like you have to make a decision at some point. And I feel like you have to just accept the fact that you are not going to have the perfect democratic system right away. Because you have to defeat the liberal propaganda first. And that's never going to happen unless you really follow suit. Unless you really live up to the ideals that you propagate in your propaganda. If you say power to the people, you have to literally give power to the people. Otherwise, you ain't going to get shit. Otherwise, you're just going to get a dictatorship, which I think is what happened with every Marxist-Leninist quote-unquote democracy. You can look at North Korea for the worst example of that. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Do those people have workplace democracy? Do those people have economic democracy? They don't have anything. Sorry. So, it has to start, you have to just start by just giving just liberation, period. And yes, the liberals will take over. They will. And you'll have capitalism. And I feel like every Marxist revolution is just afraid of capitalism. They're like, we can't have capitalism. It ruins everything. And I understand, yes, it's horrible. But how are you going to have a real revolution unless you empower the people? And the people will vote for capital at first. They always will. because capital runs the narrative. That's my feeling about it. Look at what your country did against governmental democracy in other countries that tried to democratically elect socialists. Look what they did to Allende and the whole Condor thing. I know, right? I know. It's horrible. It is. And I don't have any defense for that. You know? I don't have any defense for what Winston Churchill did to Greece. You know, when they tried to elect a socialist government and he backed a fascist government in retaliation. Or I don't know if they were technically a fascist government. It was a military junta, a dictatorship. I don't have any defense for that. I don't have any defense to what they did to Mossadegh in Iran when he tried to nationalize the oil industry. I don't have any defense for that. The CIA and Winston Churchill. I hate those guys. I don't like the liberal elite. I don't like that whole system. But I don't see any alternative unless you're willing to just subvert the values of your own ideology. And I'm not willing to do that. Lucas says LMAO. Apparently he found something funny. George Fisher says, thanks for the excellent videos. Heading out. Really appreciate your work. I don't think you've commented so far, George Fisher. You've been pretty quiet so far. Thank you. I'll be right back. I gotta go to the bathroom. Sorry. I was gonna put that over the webcam, but it didn't work. Here I am. Back in black. I hit the sack. That is a comfy sounding white noise, says the Akushi. Yeah. Okay. Maybe, I still got some time. Some electric guitar.
I struggle for control. The children love the show, but they fail to see the anguish in my eyes. Fail to see the anguish in my eyes. I scratch around the brim. I let my mind give in. Yeah, yeah, the crowd begins to grin. But they seem to scream when darkness fills my eyes. Fail to seem to scream when darkness fills my eyes. It's no surprise, and you'll meet your doom. Fail to see the tragic turn to. It's this one. My big time tricks will always make you happy, but we all know that the hat is wearing me. Alright, that's enough. Dubs fan says, LOL, I love it. Well, alright. Let me get back to this. Douchebag Bible study. Introduction. Some of the things I wrote in my first 3 books seem cringeworthy looking back, but I don't allow myself much shame. I wrote every word. I stand by every word, because to apologize for something I wrote would be to apologize for a moment in time. That's wise. How can I apologize for my thoughts and feelings, now or in the past? How can I say I was thinking the wrong thing, or that I said the wrong thing? There is no wrong thing. There is only the thing that you said in the moment that you said it. Some of what I've said in the past has been controversial. I'm sure much of what I say in the future will be similarly controversial. However, nothing you will read here was designed to merely create controversy. I hope that you bear that in mind as you read through this compilation of my 3 published books, Scumbag Musings of a Some Human, In Defense of Evil, Why Good is Bad and Bad is Good, and Neckbeard Uprising. Each one has faults and failings. Each one is an imperfect work. Scumbag is short, and more written to be funny or crude than to be enlightening. The version here is not complete. I don't have a complete version, sadly. In Defense of Evil is distracted from its premise early on and never really coheres. Neckbeard Uprising is admittedly cobbled together from conversations I had on the internet. None of these books represent me or my true potential, but they are the books that I've written, and I cannot run from them. They may not be everything I wish they were, but they are still my books, and I love them, flaws and all. I hope you will too. I don't love them, I gotta say. And he says, this work is dedicated to Hardcase for being exactly like me and yet my complete opposite, and for amusing me with his frequent death threats. The funny thing about Hardcase is that Hardcase actually threatened him with a gun pointed to his head at one point on Blog TV back in the day. And that isn't even the only time he's been threatened with a gun.
Apart from these two brilliant souls, I'd like to thank a number of those who have shaped me into what I am, for better or worse. Mom, for trying to understand. Dad, for supporting my lazy ass. Scotty, for being my best friend. Stevie, for loving me more than I deserve. Cookie, for making me laugh. Sherry, for allowing my penis inside her on a few occasions. Steve, for trying his best. JD, for being wise in his insanity. Nick, for making my childhood interesting. Natalie, for making me think of others before herself. For thinking of others before herself, rather. Zach, for his inspiring paintings. Cody, for his beautiful photography. Interesting, Zach and Cody, like it's the sweet life of Zach and Cody. But Cody was his cameraman for a while. Nate, for his tireless cruelty. Mr. Taylor, for being the biggest asshole I've ever met. I think that was his teacher in high school. Jesse, for being the first person I ever trusted. Thank you all. Then he says, this is where you'd normally find copyright information, but I'm too fucking lazy to bother with all that jazz. And with the advent of the internet, it would be too much of a pain in the ass to try to stop you from swiping this shit and reusing it anyway. I'll just ask really politely that you not do so and hope that that's enough. Well, I bought the book, so I guess that's enough. I don't know, I feel like that's enough Bible study for today. Just the opening pages. Well, it seems that this stream has run its course. So, had a great time. Love talking to you all. And, have a good day. Tasfa says, man, read Black Shirts and Reds if you're interested. Probably won't. Have a good day.